program. More at wheelerhealth.org.
Helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CURES TV show and podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness for our mind, body, and spirit from credible sources. I'm Kara Sundlin, and I'm happy to say Happy New Year to you, as many of us are focusing on our goals for 2025. Well, entrepreneur and transformative coach Marni Battista is the author of a book that's coming out soon. It's called Your Radical Living Challenge: 7 Questions for Leading a Meaningful Life. And she is joining us on the show to talk all about it. Marni, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I love the premise of this. It's a unique blend of spiritual wisdom, but it also has practical exercises. But the idea of when the rabbi crosses over in these very ancient spiritual texts, there are 7 questions that are given at the gates of heaven. And that's really, if we incorporate from that level, that's a high level, we can really determine if we're leading a meaningful life, a little different than just our to-do lists.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. Like, this story kind of evolved. My dad was diagnosed with cancer. He was sick in the hospital. It was sort of an unexpected situation. And there he was, and he was mumbling about his credit cards and worried about answering his emails. And it started this whole train of thought around, like, wow, is this really what we want to be thinking about at the end of our life? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the way our culture has trained us up. And I thought, did my dad live a life of meaning? And then I thought, oh, wait, am I? And when I had this traumatic ski accident that led me to be in bed for 3 months, everything changed. And I thought, this is a wake-up call to really reorient myself to a new paradigm of what success looks like.
Yeah, and I'm happy to dive into it because the questions are fascinating. And I didn't even know that there were these ancient rabbis that had these 7 questions. So I love that. But I want to hear about your practical kind of come to awakening moment, because you were living a life in LA, hustle, bustle, and then something led you to just give it all up, to move out to Steamboat Springs and kind of just start all over and start evaluating what is a good life. What does it look like?
Yeah, it's very common for like a very busy professional or a full-time mom or whatever it is. We get so focused on the doing, and then we have these moments. And so for me, my kids had moved out. They were adults. COVID hit. I had this accident. And when I broke these 7 bones in my sacrum, someone asked me what I call wisdom-seeking questions. And I realized that I had built the foundation of my life kind of from my neck up, based on this idea that when I achieve a certain thing, then I will be happy. Well, I had the things, but I was not fulfilled. And that's a very different thing. And I felt that I had to pursue that because my mom had died at 64. I was 53. I thought, like, if I only have X amount of years left to live, is this what I want to do? Yeah. Sit here and lament for the phase of my life that's no longer here? Or do I want to handle midlife with the same enthusiasm I did with my 20s and 30s and start creating something new?
Yeah, I think so many women feel that way. I'm sure men too, but it's a big change. I have a daughter who's going to go off to college next year and a son who's a sophomore, and there's so much energy that goes into raising your family or building your career. And wrongly so, our society has certainly kind of made it seem like life is like, after that's all over, what do you do? And so the idea that we can have our wisdom years, we can have the most incredible parts of our life still ahead of us. And number one, we have some questions, 7 questions, but I want to start with the first one. Number one, I love this question. Did you seek wisdom?
Yeah. So in my book, I talk about how most of us spend our life seeking knowledge. We believe that if we get the right answer, the right information that is outside of us, then that will lead us to this grand epiphany, or we will solve the problem and everything will be fine. We will be happy. But what happens is that those questions usually put us in a loop where we can never actually figure out what the answer is. And I say that once you redirect and start asking better questions where you can guide your journey in life internally from what comes up, then you become empowered. So the question like, what is this challenge here to teach me? Why is this person in my life? What do I learn from being able to have this difficult conversation with my boss? That's way better than like, should I look for a new job? Should I stop being friends with her? Right? Am I still mad at my mother-in-law for, not complimenting me on my holiday dinner? Like those questions don't allow us to grow and change and be who we really are.
Yeah. And so even just looking at it from a higher level of did you seek wisdom is sort of freeing, because another way we're saying is that we're all in this together. There's nobody, I know people look at maybe they look at people like me on TV and think, oh, she must not have any problems. But we all have problems. We all have challenges. But the idea is that blessing or that wisdom that comes from the challenge is the purpose of it, or the greater good that we're looking for.
Yeah, because if you look back at all the challenges you've had over the timeline of your life, when we look back and reflect, typically it led us to something else that often gave us insight to our strength. It taught us to be resilient. It taught us we were more capable than we thought. We learned what we didn't want to do. And we have that wisdom inside of us. And so my invitation is for people who are listening to start using that rather than having regret or remorse for what you haven't accomplished or what didn't go the way you want. Then you have now this new starting point to go, wait, this is all happening for my soul. This is my soul's journey. It's here for me. It's not happening to me. So when I reorient in a different way of asking questions, then suddenly there's light instead of dark.
I love it. All right. Number 2, were you hopeful?
Yeah, this is a really important thing because we want to look at our life from a place of possibility, not what is constrictive. And I think that so many of us forget that the greatest power we have inside of us is our resilience. I call this being able to resource internally. If we're always looking for an external validation that we're in the right direction or something is going to work out for us, I always say it's like walking around with an old iPhone or an old phone that doesn't have the right charger anymore. And you're constantly trying to plug it in, like to get that hope or that validation. And we want to be able to go internal and change our mindset to access that resourcefulness, that resilience, and continue to understand that we are in an opportunity moment in a challenge. And it's like, what are you going to do with it? Because no one is going to rescue you, so to speak. So if we look at these situations and we go, this is my moment to really dig deep and be who I'm meant to be in the face of a challenge, this is usually when the greatest things happen on the other side of our fear.
On the other side of the fear, the greatest things happen. Okay. I think we all need to remember that. Can you put that into a practical? I know you love to infuse the practical. So let's just say everyone worries about money. And let's just say people are having struggles with how am I going to pay the bills? Or like you said, your father was worried about his emails and his credit card bills. And they're like, oh my gosh, I have this credit card debt. Or I have something that's bothering me. How am I going to pay this? Or how am I ever going to get out of this mess? How would you apply this spiritual principle of were you hopeful or where's the wisdom to really be that strong self in the face of a challenge that you may not be able to just flip a switch and change it?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important, number one, to understand that your suffering is not yours alone, and that what you said, we all are going through these struggles. And so there is a part of all of us that's in fear. And that when we can acknowledge that fear internally and give ourselves some grace and some permission to look at the data of what is going on and say, yeah, it makes perfect sense right now that I feel sort of sad, and let that be. And then look back at the places in your life where you have actually overcome a really big challenge. Where is the time that you thought everything was going to go horribly, and then a miracle happened, or you were in touch with somebody that created a breadcrumb that you followed that led to something really amazing? When I ask my clients to go back and look for the data about how life is working for them, not happening to them, it usually allows them to remember to take the 60,000, foot view and look at like, okay, this is a moment. I'm having a feeling. Feelings never last more than 90 seconds if you don't keep engaging in the negative thought. Take a breath and start making that list of like why you're awesome, what you've done that has in the past that's allowed you to overcome a challenge, and start finding the hope through action. You can't think your way into it. You have to breathe, you have to acknowledge the pain, and then start looking for the evidence of what is positive and hopeful.
Great advice. The next question at the gates of heaven that some ancient rabbis apparently would have asked. Were you true to your most authentic and essential self?
Yeah. So most people, I interviewed actually a rabbi, and he said, I've been at the deathbed of 1,000 people, and not one person said, did I work? I wish I would have worked more. But a lot of people have regret around not taking the chance, not healing the relationship, not speaking their truth. I think that so many of us are so good at finding the silver lining, which is great because we don't want to be a puddle on the floor. I believe that there's this feeling inside of us when we are getting quiet, when we're not speaking up, when we're staying in a relationship or a job past that point of where we know we should go further, but we're scared. And in those moments, we have this part of us that wants to get expressed, that wants more for us. And so this question asks, did you turn toward that part of you so that you can be fully expressed in who you're meant to be? Because there's only one of you here. And we want to live this full express life where we're living that. And so it's these basic things that we're not doing on a day-to-day basis that are causing us to not be who we really are. And I want everyone to step outside of that and be loud and proud about who you are, because it's not your responsibility to correct other people's impressions of you necessarily, but rather to be who you are and be confident in that and to keep taking those risks.
So let's just say that you gave the example of a job and people are afraid to move on, like maybe they have a side gig that they really want to turn into a business that is their authentic self, but they're like, I need this paycheck and this hasn't really come.
Yeah.
So what would be a practical exercise to give people maybe the strength to step into that authentic self and actually trust that they'll be okay?
I love this. So one of the things that's really important to understand is that this process that I teach in the book, it allows you to do what I call experiments to figure out what it is that really, really lights you up. And what I also want people to know is, and I love this analogy, if you think about your favorite toy when you were 10 that you absolutely loved, probably if someone gave it to you now, you wouldn't quite have the same passion for it because you've changed and you have evolved. So you have to first figure out who are you really and what really, really lights you up. So one thing that people can do, and I walk you through this in the book, is to figure out what I call your soul map. So if you look at the last 5 days, last 7 days, what were you doing that really blew you up, that made you feel like you were in flow? How were you doing it? Were you in a small group? Were you in one-on-one conversations? Were you outside in nature? Were you problem solving? Were you figuring out puzzles? And then the core motivation around that, was it because you crave connection? Was it because you like to solve problems? Was it because you're leaving a legacy? When you start to track these things, you can start to put together a picture of your soul map and who you really are at that most authentic place. And then you can start to brainstorm ideas about how you could start to experiment with things that allow you to do more of that in your life. When you experiment, you take a big idea and you shrink it down to something small, and that practice itself and those tasks and strategies that you implement start to bring joy and fun to your life. So you start to tiptoe into a possible future by exploring what you love and then testing it and then getting that feedback and adjusting as you go.
Which is a more grounded way than just, I think I had a feeling I'm going to quit my job and move over here and hope it all works. So, for those of us who might be living those quote unquote real lives with kids and that this is a way to kind of have that authentic life that you want, but you're going to do it in a measured, grounded way. And little by little, you're going to be led to what the next phase is.
Yeah. And it's iterative, right? You only learn by doing. So if you just think about, or you Google, or you research, or you have a conversation with AI about what's my next move, you're never going to know. Humans have a really poor result in predicting what will make them happy. So we want to have experiences, because experiences will give you information. It all works together. Then you get wisdom. You have those moments of like really getting into connection with what really you loved, what you didn't love, being who you are. And when you're doing this life by design, your joy increases, your peace increases, your fulfillment increases. And so it's the journey that is as fulfilling as the end goal, rather waiting for that one thing that's going to make you happy.
Okay, now question number 4, the gates of heaven. Let's go back there. Did you make time for your spiritual life? We talked about this on Great Day Connecticut earlier, but that doesn't necessarily mean religion.
No, it doesn't mean religion. It doesn't mean you need to do yoga. It doesn't mean you need to light a candle and sit cross-legged for 20 minutes and have no thoughts. A spiritual life, the intention of this question, actually, if you trace it back to where it came from, was, did you study? Did you learn? Did you take time to actually reflect? And that is really what this is. And so since we're talking about, did you ask wisdom questions? Were you being authentically you? You need to have a meeting with yourself in stillness so that you can actually create those feelings of hopefulness, that you can understand more deeply who you are from reflecting on what your day is. You can have gratitude. You can set an intention for your day. These moments of stillness will regulate your nervous system. They will decrease cortisol and adrenaline in your body. When you have stillness, it's like reverse aging, right? Because all the systems in your body can reset. You can feel calm, you can feel peace, and you are going to show up better for your children, for your siblings, for your boss, for your people who work with you, your clients and customers. It's really important to have some sort of stillness in your day.
Yeah. Hold that thought, because we're going to go through the other 3 questions that the rabbis in ancient times would have asked at the gates of heaven. We're just going to hear a quick word from our sponsor.
Struggling with gambling? Wheeler Health's Better Choice program offers personalized support and treatment to help you regain control. Visit wheelerhealth.org to learn more and take the first step towards recovery today.
All right, and we are back now in CURES Cures, and we're talking about the Radical Living Challenge. It's a book that's coming out. I'm here with Marni Battista, and we're talking about the research that she's done, where there were 7 questions that rabbis in ancient times would have asked at the gates of heaven, and we can use them now to make our daily grind a more sacred grind, as I like to say on this show.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, because we've got the daily grind, but it's when you talk about stuff like this, and people are all into the word of manifesting, I thought about this new car, I thought about this new big check, and it didn't happen. It's sort of like we're missing the point, right? Like the idea of this is at another level. Like your life may be some of the same things, but the way you're doing it or the way you're experiencing it is what's going to make it sacred versus just feeling like you're doing the to-do list.
Yeah, because the to-do list it's never ending. Someone said to me once, we are so ingrained in climbing the ladder to nowhere, and we all have this illusion that when we get there, then we're gonna, be in nirvana and we're gonna sit back and like drink a margarita on the beach. And they've even talked to people who have achieved those things. And if they're not living by these 7 questions, they're still not feeling happy and peaceful and joyful, and feeling like they have a sense of purpose and meaning. So it's radical, because in order to shift away from our achievement culture and our hustle culture, it's a radical thing, right? And my job here is to make radical living like the norm, right? So we can all have peace and our mental health is like off the charts in 2025.
Okay, all right, we all want that. So then question number 5, if you're at the gates of heaven, was, did you busy yourself with creation? What does that mean?
Well, back in the olden days, they were talking about procreation. We're not talking about that here.
Okay.
We're talking about, right? We're talking about, do you create? You can create things such as new thoughts, new patterns and beliefs. You can create new opportunities, new friendships, new interactions. Yes, you can create, you can cook, you can do art. That's not purely what we're thinking about here. When we look at what actually makes people feel enlivened, it is creating something. And I believe that there is this like urban legend that when you get to a certain age, you just go on autopilot and you set it and forget it. You're like, I've worked, I've had my family, I've got my home. But what happens is if you stop creating, you start to feel this sense of emptiness and a lack of purpose.
Yeah.
So finding time to create is so empowering and it adds so much fun and joy to your life as well. So we have to get into action. This is the action step of these 7 questions.
Right. When people talk about manifesting, again, like that's a big word right now. I think it even was a word of a year last year, but it's not just thinking or making a vision board, but acting. Maybe you have these principles where you're asking for something that you want to create. You're asking your higher wisdom or your spirit. But the next step would be, it's the action. And but when you say action, I'm a doer. I get into the doing too much sometimes. So what kind of action are you talking about? Because you don't mean exhausting ourselves with the to-do list.
No, what I'm talking about is putting energy into things that you love, that light you up, that what I call blow your hair back. Also, though, not limiting it to those external things, but creating new ways of being, new ways of thinking. So you can create more time in your stillness practice. You can create a new empowering thought when you're worrying about your money and you've done that work of like looking back at like how it always seems to work out. Can you create a new belief? Can you create a new mantra? Can you create a new habit around your stillness practice? Or ask for a conversation with somebody that maybe you've been avoiding something, right? So these aren't just like lists of things to do. They're also mindset shifts, they're conversations, they're ways of interacting different. So it's really just about being more of who you are, not doing more.
Yeah. So the next question, number 6, did you recognize the blessings?
This is a big one. And I think for all of us that are caught in the, oh gosh, why is this happening to me loop? This is a game changer. So one thing I talk about is that I feel like gratitude is sort of like a very simplistic idea of like, yes, we're grateful. And I want you all to be grateful. That you are able to listen right now, that you can see, that you wake up in a bed, hopefully, right? But what happens is often that we're intellectually gratitude, but when I talk to beginners about this, they're not feeling grateful. And so there I distinguish between gratitude and appreciation. And that is really taking a moment to appreciate it. And then if you really want bonus points, I talk in the book about a level of wonder. If you think about childlike wonder, when you're just right now, it's snowing where I am, and I'm like looking outside, and if there's, oh, it's so beautiful, that's gratitude. Wow, I really appreciate the stillness and the peace that the snow creates. But wonder is sort of like, it's amazing to me, right? Like the universe works in this way that it's a certain time of the year and the climate does this and it creates all these things. When we get into wonder and we have that childlike perspective about the most simple things, then we have so much more joy and contentment in our life.
Yeah. Okay. So again, the difference between appreciation and gratitude, which what came to me when you were saying that is it's not just making, although it can be helpful to make a gratitude list and count your blessings. A lot of spiritual traditions talk about that. It's when you embody gratitude and you feel it like all over, you're like, I feel this. That's more appreciation. It's like embodying it where we really aren't just in our heads about it.
Yeah. And I think like for people who are listening, like think about if you had a special moment over the last few weeks or the holidays or any time in your life where you just felt like, wow, I feel so grateful, or you felt a sense of love. If you can just practice going back to that feeling that you've had sometime in your life and then applying it to the things on your gratitude list, it like expands and it grows. And that's how you raise your vibrational frequency so that you're manifesting, right? And we're in that high source of creation and positivity, and we feel it, an embodied sense of it.
Okay. The seventh question of the 7 questions that you would have asked at the gate of heaven is, were you you? And I guess that sounds to me like you're going back to the authenticity part, but if you could expand on that.
Yeah, like I want everyone listening to love who they are. There is this there's this cultural message, like that you're not enough. I was in LA actually over the holiday for a minute, and I was walking down the street and it was like, whiten your teeth, get an infusion of this, stretch yourself. Like all these products, we're on social media. We're just saying like, we're broken. We need to be fixed. We need to be different. Who you are at the soul level is so beautiful and unique, and there's only one of you. And all of the challenges and the hurts and the traumas and the things that have happened to you are here to show you how strong you are and what is possible. And that is unique and that is beautiful. And there is something there for you in that nugget. And so when you look at like, how can I stop apologizing for myself? How can I give myself permission to be who I am, to stop making myself smaller so that other people will validate me or think I'm enough? There's so much freedom in that. And so this is the invitation to let go of the rules and the shoulds about who you're supposed to be, and fly your flag high and be who you are as much as you can.
I know we can't get to this in the probably 90 seconds we have left, but you are a mom, and I think a lot of folks are wondering, gosh, I wish I had grown up with that sense. How would you translate that to kids or teens who are so worried about getting to college or worried about doing this, or our culture is very much like that. How do you think we can give some of this to our young people?
Oh my gosh. Well, my kids, thank God I indoctrinated them into this. One of the things that I think is really important is to understand that there's a lie that we've all been told that if you do it perfectly, then you will feel good, or you will get happiness, or you will get what you want. One thing my principal told me when I was in high school, and I'm still teaching it to everyone I can, is the journey is just striving to do your very best in being who you are by trying something new. Someone told me once, if you're not failing at least once a day, you're not pushing yourself hard enough into being more of who you are. And so remember that just because someone says like, get a good grade or go to this school, that doesn't mean it's the truth. It's just their truth. So for young people, find your own truth in a way that reflects an expression of who you are, and take action and be creative and find your own stillness so that you can follow your heart.
I love it. Marni, we're out of time, but that was full of lots of wisdom. They can find you on Instagram, Marni Battista. The book is coming out soon. Thank you so much for being on CURES Cures.
No, thanks for the opportunity.
CURES Cures, sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.